And if it's 10 minutes, it's 10 minutes. If it's a half an hour, it's a half an hour.
Okay.
Just
Shoot for more 10 minutes than half hour.
Yeah. No rush. Or no pressure, I guess that's a better way to say it. Okay. Good. I'm Mike. No, I can't start with that. What is this? The Ride for Freedom interviews?
Yeah.
Cool. I'm Mike Reeder. Today I'm joined by Kate Rohdenburg of WISE here in Lebanon, New Hampshire, and this is the first of our Ride for Freedom interviews. So let's start off. Kate, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure.
Before we talk about the company.
Okay. So I'm the program director at WISE. I've worked here for about 15 years, I think we just figured out.
Yeah.
And I support our advocacy and prevention education programs.
Cool. Now let's talk about the actual organization WISE. What is WISE?
Mm-hmm. So WISE is an organization that collaborates with survivors of gender-based violence. That looks like intimate partner violence, sexual violence, stalking, sex trafficking, etc. And try to create as much space and as many resources as are possible so that people can make decisions for their lives that make the most sense for what they really want next.
And you said when we were talking before that it's been around since 1972.
1971.
1971.
Yeah.
So
50 years.
50 years.
51 at this point.
Do you know anything about the history about how it got started?
I do, yeah. So 1971, the whole kind of country was talking about liberation for all different kinds of people. And a group of women in this area decided they needed to be a part of that and were really part of this growing women's liberation movement where they felt like women didn't have choices, women didn't have autonomy, and that this group of women wanted to come together to help each other. So it started in kind of an upstairs on Main Street in Hanover, and people just said, what can we do to help women specifically have more freedom? And sort of evolved over time, eventually started to get some funding, hired an executive director, and sort of at the same time, crisis organizations, rape crisis organizations, and domestic violence were starting to happen across the country. And WISE realized that was really a place that we could dig in and focus. So we joined the New Hampshire Coalition and the Vermont Network Against Domestic and Sexual Violence as they were created, and we've gone from there.
Cool. And I mean, in the past 50 years, there's been a major kind of progression of awareness, at least. There's still an incredible problem. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like that awareness has helped the movement at all?
I think the conversations are really different. I think that we have an opportunity to now dig a little bit deeper into why domestic and sexual violence, sex trafficking are happening, what the impacts of that look like, and how interconnected those experiences are to a lot of other things that are happening in our country. We also now have the benefit of decades of research about how we can prevent those things from happening in the first place. And so I think we have a lot more just from, decades of conversation and really important thinkers. And I think we're not quite ready yet to implement all of those things that might really push us into the next phase where gender-based violence isn't happening.
Right, and I'm sure there's a lot of legislative stuff that needs to be done as well, and that's
across the board, yeah.
That's a whole other burden to bear. Right? Kate, can you tell me how this looks in the Upper Valley?
Yeah. So the Upper Valley is about 23 towns and encompasses a lot of diversity in terms of New Hampshire and Vermont. We have one really big hospital, Dartmouth Health. We have two major interstate highways, and so we see a lot of movement in this area, people coming and going to Dartmouth College, to some of the major employers in the state, and for medical care from all across both the states and the region. And so in terms of trafficking in particular, a lot of times we're seeing people who are accessing medical care at Dartmouth Health. We may be seeing people who are becoming involved with the criminal legal system because of other things that are going on that often intersect with experiences of trafficking. And we just have an area where people are kind of coming to work or coming to recreate or are visiting, in addition to all of the people that live here. So WISE works with around 1,500 people in any given year.
Wow.
In terms of survivors, and we do somewhere around 5,000 prevention education programs every year. We have a particularly strong youth violence prevention program that sees students we have 9 school districts in our area, and we see students starting in kindergarten, and every year get to work with students as they go through their school careers up through high school, really trying to work on some of those things that I said before that we know can, if implemented early and often, start to prevent and reverse the vulnerabilities that can lead to domestic and sexual violence.
Do you think being in a college town, there is a correlation to it as well because of the college culture and drinking culture and things like that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think all of us live in cultures that promote violence right now. And there are some things that are more or less correlated with experiences of violence. Some of those things absolutely show up in college campuses and particular dynamics in specific campus environments. We actually have an advocate who specializes in campus advocacy.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. And so she is co-located at Dartmouth, is particularly well-versed in Title IX, which also shout out is 50 years old this year. And is helping survivors, students, as well as staff and faculty who may be experiencing violences within that particular culture of a small rural campus community.
How many people work for this organization?
I think we have 22 at the moment.
That's super cool.
I do have to say we also have maybe 40 volunteers who take calls on our crisis line, especially nights and weekends, and it would not be possible for us to have a 24-hour response to survivors if we didn't have our community members who take a 35-hour training and show up for us to answer whatever comes in the middle of the night. Going to the hospital to support a SANE exam, going to the police department, responding to lap calls. They're really important.
That's super cool. Yeah, I was going to ask you, how could people get involved?
Yeah.
So you're saying volunteering is one option, take a training,
Mm-hmm.
and then they can be part of the crisis hotline.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other ways that people can help out?
Tons of ways that people can help out. So yes, going through a training I think is great. The more that we learn about why gender-based violence is happening and how it's impacting our communities, I think the better all of us can respond. Even with 22 staff and a bunch of volunteers, it's not possible for WISE to change the conditions that are causing gender-based violence by ourselves. We really need the whole world to be participating with us. And we think that everyone has a role to play in how that looks, how that shapes all of our lives. So in addition to coming to us for the trainings and educational programs we're doing or the volunteer opportunities that we have, the crisis line, being an ambassador, joining our board, other ways that people can join if the crisis line's not the right place for us is to invite us to where you are, where you have some influence in your community, whether it's doing book discussions about books that have themes of gender-based violence, whether it's inviting us to your workplace to talk about how employees might be experiencing gender-based violence and how that impacts their work, whether it's just coming to a group that you're a part of to think about how can we be more intentional in the way that we're living that can start to shift the trends in our culture.
I only have kind of one more question for you.
Yeah.
Let's end on a positive note. What do you have any stories or anything to show that there's been positive change in your community from WISE being around?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a big question.
It's a big question.
I think what's been really meaningful for me is a lot of people, I think, want to join organizations like WISE because they think, I can help those people. there's some sympathy about people experiencing violence and this sense that like I can help. And what we've found is that when people really get engaged, they realize that it's kind of our own lives that we're changing. When we think about changing lives and changing the world, that like when we start to see all of these things that are happening in our culture, like gender inequality, like loss of autonomy, like the rules and policies that are put in place so that some people have access to things that other people can't get in touch with, then we start seeing every day the opportunities we have to make a difference, to make that stop, to not think about it as like, I'm going to help people who are suffering, but more like all of us are in this together and we can collaborate with one another to give people the resources that we need, the autonomy that we deserve, and the freedom to choose the lives that work best for us. And that when we start to come together and do that together collectively is when we can be the most powerful.
And I imagine that really helps with burnout as well, right? Having this kind of collective unit.
Yeah, we're not like saving people. We're not, our tagline is share hope, change lives, end violence. And I think a lot of people thought that change lives meant like changing survivors' lives.
Okay, yeah.
But like it's us. Like we can all be changed by doing this work.
I like that.
You know what I mean? Like that we are all living in this world that often a lot of us don't have to think about very hard. But when you start to see all of the ways that this isn't working for us, that loss of autonomy means for all of us, that liberation is for all of us, then we start to see like, oh, I have opportunities to think about my language, to have conversations with my family, to raise my kids with a different understanding of the world that values everybody and lifts everybody up.
Yeah, I love that. The Freedom Cafe is a kind of similar tag, but we have a make change one cup at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a while to kind of like actually feel that, because I was like, I don't feel like I'm making change because I'm obsessed with the latte art I'm making or something like that.
Yeah.
But like when you think about like the micro moves you can make to make positive change,
Mm-hmm.
I started to sink in.
Yeah.
So it's cool. It kind of sounds like the same thing with you.
Yeah, I think some people think, the crisis line, it's incredible people who volunteer to be on the crisis line. And that's not for everybody. For some people that feels too big. But just having a different lens for the media that we're consuming, or having a different framework for deciding what companies we're going to engage with, or, the different conversations that we might be having with our kids about why things are the way they are and what we could maybe do to make small changes that add up to big changes.
Yes. Awesome. Well, Kate, I don't have any other questions for you. Is there any way that people can donate or do anything like that?
Yeah, always ways to join us. Our website is wiseuv.org, and there's lots of ways to get involved, to join us, to see what we're doing, join our newsletter, and hear the happenings, and come to an event, come hang out in our program center, come say hi to us at one of the farmers markets or tabling opportunities we're doing. Love to talk to you.
Okay.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much.
Good luck on your ride.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Ride for Freedom interview. Number 1 with Wise, Kate Rohdenburg, and goodbye from Lebanon, New Hampshire. Great.